Hey y'all, I'm Hope. Welcome back. Today we're doing a book haul because it is the beginning of October, which means that it's time for my Q3 book haul. I like to do a quarterly book haul just to kind of check in and see how many books I've bought and where I'm kind of sitting with my owned TBR. So going into Q4 here at the end of the year, I started Q3 at 349 books on my TBR. I'm ending Q3 at 358 books on my TBR. So it has gone up a little bit, but not a lot. And I've noticed that the rate of increase on my TBR has dropped dramatically. I've done a much better job of being selective in the books that I'm buying, but also in reading the things that are already on my shelves. This quarter was a little bit different just because I was reading a lot from the library and because it's the start of my second year of my master's degree kind of here in the latter part of this quarter. My reading kind of slowed down there. But overall, I'm really happy with this. I'm not mad about having only gone up 9 books. I think that's a nice rate of change. It's not overwhelming. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I think we're just going to go ahead and start with ebooks and audiobooks just because I like to put the stuff where I have to put a picture up early so I can get it over with. And the first ebook I have to mention here is Mammoths at the Gates by Nevo, which is the 4th book in the Singing Hills cycle. This is a series of novellas that are basically about storytelling, but in a really rich, interesting fantasy world, and I just love this series. I love Chi, the protagonist. They're just a fun character, and they have their bird companion, almost brilliant, and it's just a lot of fun. I think all the stories that have been told so far in the series have been really interesting, and I'm excited to see where Chi is going to go next. After that, this is not the order I bought them in, this is the order I'm remembering them in. I also have Compulsory by Martha Wells, which is a revamped version of her short story, The Future of Work Compulsory, which is a free short story you can read, I think, on Tor's website. But this one is a Murderbot short story that I think precedes the events of the series. And it's just very short. It's like 5 pages or something. It's a very easy read. And I think this one is a really fun one if you just like Murderbot and you want that extra bit of content. But also I think it's a good starting point if you're not sure if you're going to like the Murderbot voice. So I think this is a good one if you're wanting to kind of dip your toes into Murderbot before you start on the full series. Then the next thing I got was the audiobook for Empty Smiles by Catherine Arden, which I ended up buying because my library just never got the 4th audiobook. This is the last book, and I had read the first 3 from my library and I just never got the last one. So I bought this one and listened to it immediately, and this one is, I think, my least favorite in the series. I still like it. I think it's very spooky. The atmosphere is great, but this one feels a little bit rushed in comparison to the other books in the series. The rest of the books I have to talk about are all physical. I'm pointing over there because I have a very large stack sitting on a table over here that I'm hoping I don't knock over when I go to start pulling things off of it. But I'm just going to go through these. These aren't, again, in any particular order. They're just the order that I set them on the table in. So we're just going to start at the top and move to the bottom and hopefully not knock anything over in the process. So first I have Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. I can't remember exactly when I got this one, but I primarily got this because it was one that sounded very fun and entertaining. This one is about an institute where you can go to learn to commit the perfect murder, specifically here, Murder Your Employer, but I think this is going to be the beginning of a series. And I picked this one up too because I think my mom is going to like this one a lot. She's actually currently reading it. I went and borrowed it back from her so that I could make this video. But I think this is one that both my mom and I were really interested in, so that's why I picked this one up. The next thing I have here is Scorched Grace by Margot Dewaihe, and this one is a noir, hard-boiled detective story. I think it's more hard-boiled than noir, but this is a detective story about a nun who used to be like a punk, and now she is a nun. And there is some sort of, I think it's a series of arson cases that she gets involved in investigating because she's getting annoyed with the way that the arsons are, or the cases of arson are impacting life at this convent and at the school associated with it. And she's also annoyed with the way the police aren't really doing anything about it. So she just decides to take it upon herself to investigate. I think this is also the start of a series and it sounds super fun. Yes, it says it's a Sister Holiday mystery. It sounds like such an interesting book, and I actually picked this one up for Noelle 7 Pages book club, and then I didn't ever get time to read it, but it just sounds so cool, and I'm really excited to get to this one. I'm hoping to get to it before the end of the year, but we will see, because I often say that, and then obviously I can't get to every book I say that about, but I think this one just sounds like it's going to be really interesting, and it's been a while since I've read like a hard-boiled detective type mystery, so I think it'll be a fun one to dive into. Next, I've got Jade Shards by Fonda Lee, and apologies if I'm moving around the frame. I'm having to step over there to grab the books. we work with what we've got, you know? But I've got Jade Shards by Fonda Lee, which is a series of short stories. My bookmark is falling out of it. A series of short stories that are set in the world of the Greenbone Saga. I think all of these precede... Yeah, so it's prequel short stories to the series. These are all short stories about some of the major characters of the series prior to the events of the major books in the series before we get to Jade City. These next two are both books I got for class, and they are very different. One of them being Othello by Shakespeare, which I read for a class on gender and sexuality studies, which this was a really interesting play. It was very different from what I expected. It's a tragedy, and the kind of tragic hero is Othello, the titular character, but the actual main perspective is the villain, Iago. So it was a really interesting experience, and I'm glad that I finally read this one. And then we have the book I'm currently reading, which is Snow Crash, which I'm reading for English 237, which is the class I'm TIing for. Next up is another book I'm currently reading, which is Guardian by Priest. This is a kind of paranormal mystery / romance book. I think it's a part of a trilogy, but this is following these two men, Zhao Yunlin and Xin Wei, who are a paranormal investigator and a university professor, respectively. There's a romance between them, but also they meet through a murder investigation that Zhao Yunlin is leading. Next up, I've got The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui, and this one is a dark academia book following a young Pakistani woman who is living in London. She's kind of living off her parents' allowance, and she's just feeling kind of stuck. She really wants to work as a translator, but she's kind of struggling, and her boyfriend has this, like, ridiculous way with languages. Like, he can learn languages so fast. She finally decides to ask him how he manages this when he learns Urdu, like, overnight, and he ends up telling her about this place called The Center, and it is a place where you go to learn how to learn languages. But the thing is, it's a weird, isolated 10-day program, and she gets involved with The Center and starts to learn a lot of the secrets that maybe should have stayed buried. I'm really excited to read this one. I think it sounds like it's going to be so fun. This is also another one that I think Noelle 7 Pages is doing for her book club. I think it's this month, actually. Next up is, I think, my favorite book I have gotten this quarter. It's the most beautiful book I've gotten this quarter, but also I've read it already, and I love this book with all of my heart. 5 stars, no question. This is Huge Around the World by Shelley Parker Chan, and this is the Illumicrate edition, which I got to match my Illumicrate You Became the Sun, which I've canceled my Illumicrate subscription, so this was like the only one that I was really like, I have the first book and I feel like I need to have the matching special edition for the second book. This is definitely a favorite series of mine. These books are really intense and really emotional and have a lot of trigger warnings, but they are so interesting. The characters are fascinating. I love these so much, and I just love this edition. So it's got the kind of ombre edges with the stencil on this side, and then there is artwork. There's foiling and artwork underneath. So definitely the most beautiful book I bought this quarter, and just, I think, a favorite overall. I'm so glad to have this on my shelves. Also, the end papers are gorgeous. Look at that. This is one of the prettiest books on my shelf, without any doubt. The next two things I have to talk about are both Book of the Month books. I didn't get them from Book of the Month. I got them from a local used bookstore, but since they were sitting together, I figure I'll talk about them together. First one is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, which I know a ton of people have been reading this year. All I know about this is that it follows a woman who goes to a writing retreat that I think is being run by her favorite author, and her former best friend and now rival is also there. And when everyone arrives for this retreat, they find out that whoever writes the best novel during this month that they're going to be staying there gets a, like, massive publishing deal. And so it becomes this, like, really cutthroat competition between the different writers. That's all I really know about this, but I've heard it gets really weird. And I know that also, the Literature Book Club, run by Steph Loves, read this, and they described it as an erotic thriller, so I don't know what that means in this context, but I'm really curious to give this one a try and see what I think of it. And then I also have Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, which I know is a feminist myth retelling. I can't remember off the top of my head which myth it is based on, because I always want to say it's the Mahabharata, and I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on that. So I will have to look that up, and if I remember to, I'll put it on the screen, but I may not remember to do that. but I am just very excited to give this one a try as well because I've heard nothing but excellent reviews for this book. I don't think I've seen anybody not like it, and I've heard that the writing is really lovely, so I'm very excited to give this one a try because I loved Circe, and I saw this kind of billed as for fans of Circe. Next up, I have my second of 3 Martha Wells books I pre-ordered this year, and this is City of Bones, which is, I think, a reprint of one of her earlier books. I think it might have been re-edited as well. I saw somewhere that this is like the author's preferred version of the text or something like that, but this one is about 2 people who are, what is the word? Relic dealers, I think? Yeah, so they're relic dealers. It's Kat and Sagai. They're relic dealers working in the bottom tiers of society. They get hired to, I think, find some piece of old ancient technology, and the things they discover along the way, mostly they expect, but then it mentions at the bottom of the description that they soon find themselves as the last line of defense between the suffering masses of Karasat and a fanatical cult bent on unleashing an evil upon the city with an undying thirst for bone. That they did not expect. That sounds like so much fun, and I love the Murderbot Diaries so much in terms of like the authorial voice of them, the way that Martha Wells writes. So I'm very excited to give this one a try. I know that a lot of people have been reading Witch King, which I have right up here, and not loving Witch King, interestingly enough, but I'm really excited to give both Witch King and this one a try and see what her fantasy books are like because I love Murderbot so much. Next, I've got another one I got at the local used bookstore. I had like 4 that I bought all at once, and they ended up in different parts of this stack. But here I have Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan, which is the first book in the, I can't remember the name of this, the Powder Mage trilogy, which is a flintlock fantasy that sounds super interesting, that is looking at the aftermath of a coup. So the coup has already happened, and this is like what comes next. I love that premise. I love anything that happens like in the wake of a big event and kind of looking at what happens after the big event has happened. And so I'm really excited to give this one a try. I'm kind of holding off on it for right now because I'm also currently reading the First Law trilogy, and I feel like that is going to be similar in tone to this, so I don't want to read both at the same time. I think that would be confusing, but I'm very excited to give this one a try. I think I'm really going to like flintlock fantasy. I like this kind of mixture of technology and magic, so I'm very excited. And then we've got Untamed Shore by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. She's one of my all-time favorite authors, so I just pre-order everything that she writes at this point. Like City of Bones, this is a reprint of an earlier work, and I'm excited to give this one a try just because everything I've read from her so far has been her newer work from Mexican Gothic onwards. And so I'm interested to see what her writing was like kind of at the beginning of her career. And I think it's just going to be an interesting experience. I think this one is a noir story set in California about a young woman who gets involved with a group of mysterious men. Then we have got, I'm holding it upside down, then we have got Soichi by Junji Ito, which I have already read. This is a series of stories about Soichi, who is a just weird 5th/6th grader, and all of the kind of nonsense he gets up to. He's very creepy, and he is like using magic in some way. It's unclear how he's doing this, but it's just like all of the nonsense that Soichi gets up to, harassing his family and harassing his classmates and scaring people and just, you know, generally being a menace. Next, I have one of my other most anticipated releases for this quarter. This is The Death I Gave Him by MX Liu, and this one is a sci-fi locked room murder mystery thriller retelling of Hamlet, which is a lot of stuff going on, but they're all words that I like. So I'm very excited to give this one a try. I feel like I need to reread Hamlet before I read this though, just so I can kind of catch the references and the Easter eggs and all of that stuff, because it's been several years now since I've read Hamlet, but Hamlet is my favorite of Shakespeare's plays that I've read so far, so I'm not mad about needing to reread it, and I'm just so excited to see how the author has woven all these pieces together. I haven't read anything from MX Liu before. I think this is their debut novel. I know they have a novella out as well called If Found, Return to Hell, which I also want to read, but I haven't gotten that one yet. But this is just such an interesting premise to me. And also I love this color scheme. Like, it's pink and yellow, which is so obnoxiously bright, and I love it. Another highly anticipated release is Murder in the Family by Kara Hunter, which I actually found out about just shortly before it came out. But this one is a mixed media murder mystery about a guy who's, I think it's his father or his stepfather. His stepfather was murdered like 25 years ago, something like that. And now, all these decades later, the son is a filmmaker, and he is getting involved with this TV show that is going to bring back together all of the people involved with the original investigation, and they're going to bring together all the documents and try to reinvestigate this cold case and see if a group of like compiled experts can figure out what actually happened, But this book itself is all of the documents and all of the interviews that they're using on this show, and I think you get to try and like solve the mystery yourself before the characters in the book figure it out. And I think it sounds like so much fun. I am planning a vlog for this one because I think it's going to be a really fun one to do a kind of spoiler vlog on. We've made it to the final 3, and I think I'll start with the last one I got at my local used bookstore, which I just threw at the ground. Luckily I did not drop it on my cat. We came close, but he's fine, and now he's looking at me like, how dare you? Good news, cat's okay. This book is Maplecroft by Sherry Priest, and this one I pitched generally as Lizzie Borden, but what if she was a monster hunter? Then we have The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard. This one is a thriller set in Dublin, I think. I know it's set in Ireland. I think it's set in Dublin. That is about 2 young women who are both investigating this series of missing women. One of them is the sister of one of the women who's gone missing, and the other one I think works as like an administrative assistant or some sort of administrative role with the missing persons unit, but she really wants to be an officer in the An Garda Síochána, and so she is determined to like take on this investigation herself and see if she can figure out what's happening to all of these missing women. And this book is based on true events. It's based on a series of actual kidnappings, and I'm really interested to see what this book is like. I haven't read anything from this author yet, but I've heard some good things. The last book I have here is American Demon by Daniel Stashower, which is a nonfiction book about Elliot Ness and the investigation into the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. I don't know much about either of these pieces, so I'm really interested to dive into this one. It's been a while since I've read any kind of true crime, so I thought this one would be an interesting one to start with, and I'm very excited to dive into it, and I'm hoping that the writing will be compelling. So those are all of the books that I bought from July to September, and I would love to know in the comments down below if you have read any of these and what your thoughts were on them. I think that's pretty much all I have for you today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there's more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.